It's your boy Ty back here with another video. And in this video today, guys, we're going to be going over and ranking our top 10 shooting guards in NBA 2K24 MyTEAM as it stands right now. Now, I'm just going to give some honorable mentions, okay? Some honorable mentions first. This card with the duo is our first honorable mention. I think when you add this duo to Austin Reaves, he becomes a top 10 shooting guard in the game, but I think without it, he's not a top 10 shooting guard in the game. Austin Reaves close, didn't quite make the cut. Some other guys close that didn't make the cut. I would say a guy even like Gordon Hayward, Michael Jordan, they are guys that are close. Brandon Roy, another guy that's close that didn't quite make the cut. So those are like 4 guys that if you don't like my top 10 that are really solid that you guys can pick up for you and your specific squad. For my 10th spot, I debated Brandon Roy, Jaylen Brown. I went with Jaylen Brown, and if you're wondering why, he just gives you a little more defense. I don't necessarily even love Jaylen Brown because I feel like badge-wise, they did him really wrong. But I still think because of his driving dunk, because of his 3-ball, his speed, lateral quickness, he can play at a pretty high level. Now, again, I still think the potential of Jaylen Brown should have been higher than he ended up being. Like, I really don't love this card. But when it comes down to Jaylen Brown and Brandon Roy, that's where I went. I went with defense. Because if I look at a guy like Brandon Roy, who I still really like, I think Brandon Roy is way better offensively. I just feel like defensively just wasn't nearly as good as a guy like Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown coming in at my 10 spot. At my number 9 spot, Franz Wagner. It was really tough because I feel like, again, Franz another guy is that with the duo, he's probably, maybe even at number 7 on this list. Without the duo, he probably doesn't make the list. So it just depends on what you want to look at for Franz. I feel like a lot of people are running Franz and Jalen Suggs. And if you are, I want you guys to realize Franz is that top 10 shooting guard. I'm plugging him in at number 9. 6'10", D-book dribble style. Franz release is really solid. He doesn't do enough offensively to make him like, wow, he's just absolutely ridiculous. And same thing defensively. I feel like he's just really solid on both ends of the court. But for me, at the shooting guard position for Franz Wagner, solid is enough. I don't need him to, go out there and be, Kobe. I don't need him to be that best shooting guard in the game. As long as he's solid for the MT I'm spending on him, I like what you get out of Franz Wagner. At my number 8, kind of slept on, RJ Barrett. Even without the duo with Patrick Ewing, RJ Barrett is still really solid. Why? Release really solid, 87 3-ball, 89 speed, solid lateral quickness. There's just no real downfalls of the new Toronto Raptor. Now for Patrick Ewing, if you add the duo, then he gets even better. Perimeter, lateral quickness, 3-ball all go up quite a bit, as well as driving dunk. Just becomes way, way, way better. So, again, I'm not saying you gotta run RJ with Patrick Ewing. I am saying, though, if you do run him with Patrick Ewing, he becomes even better. Is RJ Barrett worth saving those 50 New Year's event things for, basically tokens or exchange packs? I don't know. I liked RJ Barrett. I had fun with him. But the crazy part is I did a gameplay with RJ Barrett on my main account, and he'll probably never play another game for me. So it just depends on what you're looking at. RJ Barrett, still a fun card to use nonetheless. At my number 7, Diamond Andre Iguodala, 6'6", 6'11" wingspan, hot spots from both quarters. The thing that holds Andre Iguodala back is that Iggy base. It's just really slow. Like, it's easy to time, easy to green. To me, it's just way too slow to use, and especially compared to some of the other shooting guards we have. You're going to see a common 3-and-D type theme here. Now, Iggy's movement with the MJ dribble style actually is really solid, but I just feel like shooting the ball, he just doesn't do enough. Defensively, fantastic, 6'6" frame, does a lot of great things for you. Again, when we're talking about that 3-and-D build, though, at the shooting guard position, I do not think Andre Iguodala does enough to be in that top 6 range. At my number 6, Diamond Paul George, 6'8", 6'11" wingspan. A lot of people are going to argue that Paul George should not be as high as I got him. Some people might argue higher. If I'd have done this list a month ago, I would have had Paul George in my top 5. But now, I've just used some more cards. I just think Paul George isn't that next level good. Now, why? I think Paul George isn't great defensively. He's good defensively, don't get it twisted. He's just not great. When you're comparing Paul George to my 5, 4, or 3 on my list that I'm about to talk about, I just think he's the worst defender out of them, and that's why PG can't be any higher. PG's everybody's favorite card because a lot of people took advantage of that glitch that was in the game, and or mistake, however you want to phrase it, and made millions of MT off of Paul George. If you did it, he might be your number 1 shooting guard in the game for that reason and that reason alone. At my number 5, Diamond Ron Artest. This is what I'm talking about. When you compare Ron Artest's defense to Paul George's, it's really not close. Ron Artest has better defense, and quite honestly, you could have Ron Artest as your number 2 shooting guard in the entire game, and I would not argue against it. What problem do I have with Ron Artest? Well, I don't really know if it's a problem. I just feel like offensively, he really can't create. So if somebody's running like a Devin Booker, they can hide him on Ron Artest. And that's kind of what bugs me a little bit. I like Ron's release. Defensively, he's fantastic. He just isn't really good as far as playmaking or creating his own shot. I think that's the one downside that I do have to Ron Artest. And a lot of things, Ron Artest does great. There's a very limited number of things I can complain about, but that is one thing that I do complain a little bit about for Ron Artest is I just wish offensively had a little more in his bag. At my number 4, Jimmy Butler. And that's the big difference between Jimmy and Ron Artest. The cards are awfully, eerily similar. The big thing for me and Jimmy is he can go get his own bucket with these playmaking badges. You can't hide a guy like Devin Booker on Jimmy Butler because he can absolutely create his own shot. To me, as far as level 40s, we gotta appreciate how good Jimmy Butler was. And honestly, I think 2K's done a decent job creating longevity guys or guys that, as far as ultimate rewards, that have good longevity. Jimmy Butler, top 5 shooting guard. KG, Hakeem, they're top 5 power forward centers in the game still. The problem is the mode rewards are just so horrible that it gets overshadowed by that. But Jimmy Butler is fantastic. Release is fine. Dribble style, I feel like, even though it's normal, is fine. He can create his own shot. Good leaner. Jimmy Butler, really solid in my team. And if you're close to him, I'd go get him. At my number 3, Kawhi Leonard. Why is Kawhi above Jimmy? Why is he above Ron Artest? I personally feel like on-ball defense, Kawhi Leonard is the best on-ball defender in the entire game. That's why he's at my number 3. Now, I will say, Kawhi, out of all these guys, will probably be on the small forward list as well, because that's honestly where I prefer running Kawhi, and it comes down to similar with the Ron Artest thing. They are not going to be able to create their own shots, and that bugs me a ton. If I'm running a shooting guard, they at least need to create a little bit. I'm not saying I've got to be a primary ball handler, but they've got to be able to create a little bit, and Kawhi really can't do that. Release-wise, easy to time, easy to green, not the quickest. I just wish playmaking, he could do a little bit better. At my number 2, Pink Diamond, Klay Thompson. Now, this is one that is going to, maybe split the community. Some people don't like Klay. Some people love Klay. I'm a fan of Klay Thompson, and here's why. Badge-wise, 16 Hall of Famers. As far as shooting the ball, he's going to be one of the best pure sharpshooters in the entire game. Meanwhile, Hall of Fame Challenger, clamps, glove, right stick, ripper, 95 ladder quickness. You give him a speed acceleration shoe. He's got everything he needs, and release-wise is really solid. I am a fan of Klay Thompson in my team. I'm a really big fan because I feel like right now in Unlimited especially, the game is ran by shooting the ball. So sure, you can have all these locks on the court, but if you have a guy like Klay Thompson with a 98 3-ball, hot spots from everywhere, smooth release, that still can get you stops on that defensive end of the court, that has to account for everything. And for me, Kawhi, Jimmy, Ron Artest, Paul George, Andre Iguodala, all these guys are great defensively, but how many of those guys are as good offensively as Klay Thompson? Not many. Klay Thompson coming in at my number 2 at the shooting guard position. And at my number 1, Pink Diamond Kobe Bryant. The gap between Kobe and Klay is bigger than the gap between Klay and Paul George. So I just want that to be known. The gap between my number 1 and 2 is bigger than my gap between my number 2 and my 6. Okay, so just know that Kobe, the best shooting guard in the game, one of the best defensive shooting guards, one of the best offensive shooting guards, can attack the rim, has the best release on this list. He is just the best at everything. And I'm not trying to sit here and gas Kobe, because if you don't have Kobe, Ron Artest can compete, Jimmy can compete. But when it comes down to the best shooting guard in the game, it is Kobe by a very, very large margin. That is going to wrap it up for my shooting guard top 10 list. I need to know your guys' thoughts on it down below in the comments. Who was I too high on? Who was I too low on? And ultimately, who did I leave off the list that you guys would have included? Drop a like on the video. Subscribe if you're doing it. As always, man, I love you guys. And have a blessed day.